I breached my strict no-contact rule with my toxic mother to shield my dying sister. She attempted to eject me from the hospital and vowed to drag me to court. Can you imagine losing everything, your marriage, your financial security, your peace of mind, all to save the one person who truly needed you, only to have the woman who gave birth to you try to stop you at every turn? This isn't just a story. It's a brutal journey, a fight for life against a mother who truly believed her dying child was just an inconvenience. My world had been carefully constructed, 2.5 years of silence insulating me from the woman who called herself my mother. That fragile piece shattered with a single phone call, plunging me back into a nightmare I thought I'd escaped. For context, I'm David, 32, working in logistics, and I'd cut my mother out of my life after she showed up at my wedding. Picture this. She hands my wife, Emily, an envelope of cash with a note inside that read, "For when he disappoints you." Emily, bless her heart, thought it was just weird. I knew better. That was the last time I spoke to her. Until recently. My younger sister, Chloe, was 17. She lived with our mother full-time, different dads, but same suffocating grip. My mother doesn't lose what she considers hers. Chloe and I, though, we'd always stayed close. We text, not every day, but enough to know what was happening. So when she called me one night in March, her voice ragged and broken from hours of crying, I already felt a cold dread settling in. Something was terribly wrong. Chloe confessed she'd been suffering for months. Relentless headaches, nosebleeds that wouldn't stop, bruises appearing out of nowhere. She'd told our mother in January, only to be dismissed as dramatic, probably not drinking enough water. By February, Chloe was falling asleep in class, her gums bleeding when she brushed her teeth. My mother's solution? Calling her anemic and buying some iron supplements. It wasn't until Chloe nearly collapsed in gym class that the school nurse saw her. One look, and an ambulance was called. At the hospital, blood tests came back alarming. They ran them again. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Aggressive. Imagine being 17, meeting a doctor just 20 minutes ago, and hearing those words. That's how Chloe found out. My mother had already been contacted by the time Chloe called me, and I'm telling you this exactly as Chloe told it to me, raw and unfiltered. My mother arrived, perfectly composed for the doctors, signed the necessary paperwork, and drove Chloe home. Not a single word, Chloe said, in the entire car ride. When they got home, my mother's first utterance was chilling. "We'll deal with this, but you're not going to use it as an excuse to stop pulling your weight around here." That sentence. It hit me like a physical blow. My dying sister, told she might not make it, and my mother's priority was the dishes. I didn't sleep a wink that night. By morning, a plan, desperate and clear, had formed in my mind. I called my mother. For the first time in 2.5 years. She answered on the second ring, a smug, "Well, I was wondering how long it would take," oozing through the phone. I told her I wanted to help with Chloe's care, drive up on weekends, take her to appointments, whatever was needed. "That's very generous," she purred, "but I'm her mother. I think I know what she needs better than someone who walked out on this family." She agreed to let me visit, but I could already hear her framing the narrative. I was the prodigal son, she the gracious, forgiving mother. I told Emily I'd be driving 4 hours each way, regularly. She said she understood. My first visit, a Saturday morning. My mother's front garden, immaculate as ever, trimmed hedges, fresh mulch, not a single weed. The house always looked like a magazine. Chloe opened the door and my heart sank. She looked rough, gaunt, with dark circles that aged her 10 years. She hugged me so hard I could feel her ribs. We just stood there, in the doorway, neither of us speaking. Then I saw it, the vacuum cleaner, sitting in the upstairs hallway, cord still stretched across the landing. I looked at her. She just shrugged, a weak, defeated gesture. "Mom wants the guest room cleaned before Aunt Diane visits next week." I was halfway through when you knocked. My sister, whose white blood cell count was practically 0, was vacuuming. Vacuuming a guest room. I walked upstairs, unplugged the machine, and carried it back to the hall closet. My mother appeared in the doorway. "She needs normalcy," she declared, The doctors even said routine is good for her. No doctor said that. Not about scrubbing floors. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just told Chloe to sit down, and I cleaned the room myself. My mother watched, arms crossed, from the hallway. I could feel her, calculating, filing it away as evidence that I was undermining her authority. That's how it started. It became painfully clear to me then, to a parent like her, a sick child isn't a problem to solve, it's an opportunity. A stage. The binders, the calm composure in front of doctors, the she needs normalcy lines, none of that is about actual care. It's about image control. And if you've never dealt with someone like this, everything she does looks utterly reasonable from the outside. That's the whole twisted game. Over the next 2 months, I drove up almost every weekend. Sometimes I'd take a Friday off, staying through Sunday night, getting home after midnight and going straight to work. My boss was understanding, but I could feel his goodwill wearing thin. Chloe started chemo in April. The first round hit her hard, constant vomiting, rapid weight loss, sleeping 14 hours a day. By the end of the second round, she'd lost most of her hair. She started wearing this oversized beanie everywhere, even inside, even when it was 90 degrees out. Going for the hipster lumberjack look, she'd joke, then fall silent when someone at the pharmacy stared too long. I was there for her first infusion. I watched her just sit there, eyes closed, gripping the armrest, not making a sound. My mother, meanwhile, managed the medical side like a cold, efficient project manager. She had a binder, took meticulous notes, asked all the right questions. To an outsider, she'd be Mother of the Year. But that binder had nothing to do with Chloe's well-being. It was about controlling the information, every piece of it funneled through her first. She'd speak to doctors in the hallway, making sure Chloe couldn't hear. I started noticing things that turned my stomach. Chloe, curled up on the couch, clearly nauseous, and my mother would ask her to fold laundry. Just the towels. It's not hard. Chloe would drag herself off the couch and do it, because saying no cost more energy than just doing the stupid towels. One weekend, I showed up and Chloe had a bruise on her shin the size of my palm. She'd bumped into the coffee table. Her platelet count was so low that even minor contact left marks. She was at the kitchen table, homework spread out, looking gray. Actually gray. My mother was in the next room, laughing on the phone, utterly unbothered. I pulled Chloe aside and asked her, point blank, how things were when I wasn't there. She dodged it at first, classic Chloe, deflecting with sarcasm. Oh, it's a spa retreat. 5 stars. Would recommend. But then she went quiet. She makes me feel like I'm faking it, Chloe whispered. Like if I just tried harder, I wouldn't be sick. That confession sat heavy in my chest for days. The very next visit, I walked in and found my mother standing over Chloe at the kitchen sink, while Chloe, gripping the counter like she was trying not to pass out, washed a full rack of dishes. I lost it. Not screaming, but I got loud. I told my mother she was going to kill her own daughter through sheer neglect, that she should be ashamed of herself. I said it in front of Chloe. My mother didn't flinch. She just calmly said, see? This is the instability I was worried about. But the real damage wasn't what my mother did. It was Chloe. She went to her room, slammed the door, and didn't come out for 2 hours. When she finally did, she looked at me, her eyes hollow. You made it worse, she said, her voice barely audible. When you leave, I'm still here, and now she's going to be in a mood for a week because you embarrassed her. She was right. I'd made myself feel better and made her life harder. That's a lesson I wish I'd learned cheaper, but that was the one that cost me everything. After that, I stopped reacting. Reacting was a luxury Chloe couldn't afford. Most people, seeing their sick sister barely standing, still doing dishes, would have said something. But here's the cruel truth about people like my mother. Your anger is their ammunition. The second I raised my voice, she got exactly what she wanted, a witness, a story to tell later, and a reason to call me unstable. Meanwhile, back home, things with Emily were shifting. At first, the weekends away were fine. Then they became a lot. Then she started making comments. You know she has a mother, right? We had plans this weekend and you just canceled again. She wasn't wrong about everything. I was stretched thin. But she also stopped asking how Chloe was doing after the first month. It was always about me being gone, never about why. To her credit, she did drive up with me once early on, maybe the third weekend. She brought soup she'd made for Chloe, sat with her for an hour. When we got in the car, she was quiet for a long time. Then she started crying. "I don't know how you do this every week," she admitted. My friend Mark was the only person who truly got it. We'd been friends since college. He knew my family history. One weekend, he just showed up. Drove up with me, spent 3 hours sitting with Chloe, watching terrible reality TV while I picked up her prescriptions. Chloe later told me he was surprisingly not annoying for one of your friends, which, coming from her, was basically a 5-star review. Mark said something that stuck with me. We were driving back that Sunday night. He had this gas station sub, picking at it but never actually finishing. I think he threw half of it out the window somewhere around exit 14. "Yeah, littering, I know." He turned to me, "Dude, you're documenting none of this. If it ever comes down to your word versus your mom's, you're going to lose. She's got money and she's got the title. You've got nothing on paper." He was right. I started keeping a log, dates, times, what I observed, what Chloe told me, what my mother said, photos when Chloe allowed them, every single text my mother sent. Mark even helped me set up a shared drive and organize it all. My mother, of course, had started calling me during the week, giving me her curated updates. "Chloe had a good day today. We watched a movie. She's eating more. I think she's turning a corner." I knew the playbook. I'd grown up in it. In May, Chloe's blood work came back worse. The oncologist adjusted her treatment plan, mentioned a possible clinical trial, and told us point blank that Chloe needed to rest as much as possible. Her immune system was shot. Even minor physical activity could be dangerous. I was in that room because Chloe had texted me the appointment details behind my mother's back. I watched my mother nod along, as if she hadn't had my sick sister scrubbing the kitchen floor 2 days prior. In the parking lot afterwards, my mother cornered me. "You know, you coming here all the time is stressing her out more than anything. Maybe the most loving thing you could do is step back." "I'm not stepping back," I said, my voice flat. Her expression hardened. "Careful," she warned. "Don't make this into something it doesn't have to be." June was when things became clinical for me, and I don't mean Chloe's treatment. I stopped treating this like a family drama and started treating it like a logistics problem. Build systems. Document everything. When someone drops the ball, the record tells the real story. Chloe was accepted into a clinical trial at a bigger hospital, about 2 hours from my mother's house. The trial was promising, but it meant regular trips, more moving parts, and more chances for my mother to insert herself. On the first day at the new hospital, I met Marisol. She was Chloe's assigned social worker, late 40s, calm, direct. She met with Chloe alone first, then with me, then with my mother. After that initial meeting, Marisol pulled me aside. "Do you have concerns about Chloe's home situation?" she asked. I gave her the short version. She listened, without interrupting, then she said, "Does your sister have a patient password set up?" I didn't even know what that was. Marisol explained, "A privacy measure releasing medical info only to those with the password. Especially useful," she added, "when family dynamics are complicated." I talked to Chloe about it. She hesitated. "Mom will freak out if she finds out she's locked out." I told her she didn't have to lock my mother out completely, just that she had to have the option. Chloe set the password the next day and gave it to me and her treatment coordinator. Marisol also walked me through the legal reality of Chloe being 17 versus 18. Right now, my mother had medical decision-making authority. She could override treatments, access records, and legally remove me from the picture. Once Chloe turned 18 in September, she'd have full control over her own care. She could name her own healthcare proxy. She could decide who had access. September. 4 months away. Marisol gave me one more piece of advice that I think about constantly. The best thing you can do right now is be boring. Don't give anyone a reason to paint you as the problem. Just be present, be consistent, and keep your records clean. So for weeks, that's exactly what I did. Then Chloe, almost, blew the whole thing up herself. She called me midweek, and I knew from the first 2 seconds it wasn't a normal call. She'd overheard Emily and me arguing on the phone during my last visit. I'd stepped outside, but not far enough. "You need to stop coming," she said, her voice small. "You're going to lose your wife and your job because of me." I told her that wasn't her call to make. "Then I'll tell Mom I don't want you here," she threatened. We didn't talk for almost 2 weeks. I drove up the following weekend, and she refused to come downstairs. My mother answered the door, a satisfied smirk on her face. Maybe she's finally realizing who's actually been here for her. I sat in my truck in the driveway for an hour before driving home. 4 days later, Chloe texted me, "I'm sorry. I'm scared. And I took it out on you." We talked for 2 hours. She admitted she'd been hiding symptoms because she didn't want me driving up more often, downplaying pain to her doctors because our mother was in the room and she didn't want to seem dramatic. That conversation was my breaking point. It wasn't just about legal paperwork anymore. It was about getting her into a room where she could be honest without it costing her something. At home, Emily had started tracking the money. Gas, meals on the road, a pair of shoes I bought Chloe because hers were falling apart. "We're not her parents," Emily stated one night. And I understood. She wasn't wrong that I was stretched thin, but the limits she kept talking about always landed precisely at the edge of her own comfort zone. During one of my visits in late July, I showed up unannounced. I found Chloe on her hands and knees in the kitchen, scrubbing the baseboards with a sponge, tears streaming down her face. My mother had told her a house inspection was coming and everything needed to be spotless. There was no house inspection. I helped her up, sat her on the couch, and finished the baseboards myself. Took photos of everything, added it to the log. When my mother got home, she simply said, "You're not helping her by doing everything for her. She needs to feel capable." No point in responding. Nothing I said was going to register with someone who'd already decided she was right. August. Chloe had a bad reaction to a medication adjustment and ended up in the ER overnight. I drove 4 hours in the dark. I remember this one stretch of highway, 40 minutes in, with 0 streetlights. The only thing I could see was the road right in front of me. I stopped for gas halfway, and my debit card declined at the pump. I stood there under the fluorescent lights at 11:30 at night, tried the credit card, and it went through, barely. I did the math in my head. That card was done after this tank. Emily texted the next morning, "Hope she's okay. We need to talk when you get back." At the hospital, Chloe was stable but scared. She was asleep when I got there. I sat in the chair, watching her breathe for an hour before she woke. "You didn't have to come," she said, groggy. "Yeah, I did," I replied. She gave me this look, grateful and annoyed all at once. "You're such a weirdo." "I love you, though." My mother arrived the next morning, hair done, outfit perfect, totally calm. She hadn't called me. She'd called the hospital directly and walked right in. She sat down next to Chloe. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. She's been overdoing it because you keep pushing her." I said nothing. I just opened my phone and noted the time, the date, and her words. She saw me do it. Her face shifted, just for a second. "Are you keeping notes on me?" she asked. "I'm keeping notes on everything," I replied, my voice dangerously low. "You're going to regret making me the enemy in this." Then she stormed out to find the attending doctor. I found out that afternoon when a nurse carefully asked me how long I'd been involved in Chloe's living situation and whether I had legal guardianship. My mother had told the attending doctor I was estranged, had no legal authority, and was inserting myself into a minor's medical care against her mother's wishes. The attending had flagged it with the nursing staff. I had to sit down with the charge nurse, show my ID, give them Marisol's contact info, and explain the whole thing from scratch. It got sorted in a few hours, but for that stretch of time, every nurse on that floor looked at me like I might not be who I said I was. That's how she operates. She doesn't come for you directly. She goes to the authority in the room, rewrites the story, and suddenly you're the problem. If I hadn't had Marisol and months of documentation, that one move could have gotten me kicked out of the hospital entirely. Mark's advice to start that paper trail was, without a doubt, the most important moment in this entire story. Without it, I was just some random guy in a hallway, the target of a concerned mother's warnings. September 3rd was Chloe's 18th birthday. She spent it in a hospital bed. She'd been admitted 2 days earlier after her white blood cell count dropped to near zero during a particularly aggressive round of trial treatment. Neutropenic. Her immune system was non-existent. A common cold could kill her. She was in an isolation room, restricted visitors, wearing a mask, making dark jokes about how this was literally the worst party ever. I brought her a cupcake from a bakery near the hospital, just one, chocolate with vanilla frosting. I put a single candle in it. She couldn't eat it because of the nausea, but she blew out the candle. I wished for better health insurance, she said, and then, something I wasn't expecting, so I'm 18 now. She picked at the blanket, not looking at me. That means she can't make my medical decisions anymore, right? I told her that was correct. Marisol told me about the healthcare proxy thing weeks ago. Actually, I've been thinking about it. She paused. I want you to be my proxy. And I want Mom's access restricted. Not all the way, just enough that she can't mess with my treatment. I hadn't brought it up. I'd been planning to carefully after her birthday. But she'd already done the math on her own. She'd been sitting with it, timing it, waiting until it was legally hers to decide. Looking back, that's when everything shifted. Did you catch that? I didn't prompt her. She did. This girl, who just turned 18 in a hospital bed, fighting cancer, had already spoken to the social worker weeks ago, figured out her options, and waited for the exact day she could pull the trigger. Nobody coached her. She figured it out because she grew up in a house where information was survival. Kids from homes like hers learn to be strategic far too young. And, honestly, that should make you angry, not impressed. Marisol helped coordinate the paperwork that afternoon. Healthcare proxy naming me. HIPAA authorization restricting my mother's access. Visitor protocol with the nursing staff. All of it signed, witnessed, and locked in before dinner. I didn't tell my mother. It took exactly 5 days for the bomb to go off. My mother showed up at the hospital on September 8th and was told at the desk that she wasn't authorized to access Chloe's treatment information. She demanded a supervisor, then the doctor. Both confirmed the restriction. She called me 20 minutes later. Her voice was flat. What did you do? She wasn't asking, she was accusing. I told her Chloe was a legal adult and had the right to manage her own medical decisions. You've poisoned her against me, she spat. I will have an attorney contact the hospital by end of day. She did. The attorney told her what any attorney would. An 18-year-old has the legal right to pick their own healthcare proxy. There was nothing to fight. But my mother doesn't process no as information. She processes it as a challenge. The following week, Chloe had a bad night. A really bad night. A fever spiked to 104 around 2 a.m. Her oxygen levels plummeted. Alarm screamed. The nursing staff moved fast for antibiotics, cooling measures, oxygen. I was called and got there within an hour because by then I was staying at a nearby motel during treatment weeks. That motel, the carpet smelling of disinfectant, the vending machine with nothing but off-brand peanut butter crackers. I ate like 4 packs of those things that week. That night, before the call, I remember sitting on the edge of the bed and almost calling Emily. I think I just missed having someone who used to ask how I was doing. 40 minutes later, the hospital called. When I got there, Chloe was stabilized but groggy and scared. She gripped the bed rail, asking repeatedly if she was going to die. I held her hand and told her she wasn't, but I wasn't sure I was telling the truth. The attending pulled me into the hallway. Chloe's immune system had nothing left. The antibiotics were working, but slowly. If the fever didn't break by morning, they were looking at an ICU transfer. I stood in that hallway for a long time, counting floor tiles because my brain needed something to lock onto. I called Mark. 3rd try. I couldn't talk at first, he just waited. She might not make it through tonight, I choked out. What do you need? He asked. I don't know. Then I'm driving up. He did. Got there around 4 a.m. Didn't come inside. Just sat in the parking lot in his car. I didn't find that out until after the fever broke at 5:30 a.m. He'd been sitting out there for almost 2 hours, didn't want to bother me during the worst of it. When the nurse told me she'd stabilized, I walked into the bathroom and threw up. I wasn't sick or anything, it was more like my body finally let go of everything it had been holding for the last 6 hours. My mother showed up that morning. She walked into the room and went straight to Chloe's bed. "Baby, I'm here." She tried to take Chloe's hand. Chloe pulled away. "Mom, please. I'm fine. Just let me sleep." My mother turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This is your fault. She's sicker because of the stress you've caused. You need to lower your voice," I said, my jaw clenched. She didn't. She told the nurse I had manipulated a minor, incorrect, Chloe was 18, into signing documents she didn't understand. She ranted that the clinical trial was experimental garbage. She demanded I be removed from the room. From her bed, Chloe weakly said, "Mom, stop." She kept going. I stayed seated, didn't engage. The charge nurse asked her to step into the hallway. She refused. "I'm her mother. You can't remove me." "Ma'am, I can and I will if you continue to disrupt patient care." My mother looked at us both, her eyes venomous. "You'll both regret this." She didn't leave. Security escorted her out at 10:50 a.m. The incident was documented by security, the charge nurse, and Marisol. Chloe was quiet after my mother left. She just stared for a long time. Then she said, "I'm sorry you have to deal with her because of me." I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She asked if my mother could really challenge the proxy. I told her no. She asked if I was sure. I told her I was. She turned on her side, facing away from me. I just wanted her to be normal, just once. I sat in that chair until she fell asleep. After the hospital incident, my mother went on the offensive. She got an attorney and sent a formal letter to the hospital claiming I'd coerced a vulnerable, critically ill patient into signing documents. The hospital basically told her to kick rocks. The patient is a legal adult. Then she called my employer and told my supervisor she was concerned about her son's mental health and that I was neglecting professional responsibilities to pursue a vendetta. My boss hung up on her, but he pulled me aside after. Now, here's how things got even worse. Emily picked her moment. It was a Wednesday night. I'd gotten home from a 3-day stretch at the hospital. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table with printed bank statements spread out in front of her. She'd gone through and highlighted every single transaction related to Chloe. She'd added up a total at the bottom in her careful handwriting, circled twice. "This is what your sister has cost us in the last 6 months." I looked at the number. "She has cancer," I said, my voice flat. "I know she has cancer, but we're not a charity. We had goals. You made a decision on your own to spend our money on a situation that has no end date." Then she said the thing that ended our marriage. "She's your half-sister, who you barely knew growing up, and you're destroying our life to play savior for someone who's not going to make it anyway." And yeah, that's what she actually thought. The thing she'd probably been sitting on for months, too smart to say out loud, until she wasn't. She didn't say that by accident. Emily had been mentally filing Chloe in the "doesn't fully count" category for months, maybe longer. That one sentence told me everything. She had already decided which relationships were real and which ones were optional. Not going to make it anyway. She wasn't being realistic when she said that. She was hoping the problem would solve itself so the inconvenience would just go away. I picked up the bank statements, folded them neatly, and put them in the drawer. Went to shower. Went to bed. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. I didn't file right away, I'm not impulsive. I spent 2 weeks getting my finances sorted, separating what I could, and talking with the attorney. Mark helped me move important documents to his place. I didn't tell Emily any of this because I'd learned from watching my mother. If you tell people what you're about to do, you lose the upper hand. When I finally told Emily I was filing, she seemed genuinely surprised, which told me everything, but she didn't fold. She spent 3 days going back and forth between guilt trips and threats. Told me my savior complex was a sickness. On the second night, she said, "When Chloe doesn't make it, and we both know that's where this is heading, you're going to come crawling back, and I won't be here." On the third day, she called my mother. I don't know what was said, but Emily came home that evening weirdly calm and told me she'd spoken to someone who actually understands the situation. I changed the locks on the shared drive that night. "Your wife just called the woman you went no contact with behind your back." That's not frustration. That's picking a side. And I moved fast. Changed the locks on the shared drive that same night. I knew exactly what had just happened. Two people who wanted to control me were now talking to each other. At that point, it wasn't even a marriage anymore. It was a second front in the war. The divorce itself was pretty straightforward. We didn't have kids. The house was underwater, and the joint account was half gone. She got the house. I got my truck and a fresh start I couldn't really afford. Meanwhile, Chloe's treatment was actually working. October, November, still sick, still in and out of the hospital, but her counts were finally trending in the right direction. There was a scare in mid-October when one of her numbers dropped, and they had to do a bone marrow biopsy to rule out a relapse. I didn't sleep for 4 days. Chloe handled it better than I did. She texted me a photo of herself in the hospital gown with a thumbs up and the caption, "Round 48. Let's go." Biopsy came back clean. The oncologist told me to get used to the dips. Easier said than done. By November, her appetite came back a little. She started watching videos on her phone instead of just sleeping all day. She asked me to bring her a specific brand of chips that the hospital vending machine didn't carry. I drove 40 minutes round trip to get them. When I handed her the bag, she said, "Finally, someone useful in my life." I laughed so hard. But my mother wasn't done. In November, she filed a motion seeking emergency guardianship over Chloe, claiming she was medically incapacitated and that I was exerting undue influence for personal and financial gain. The financial gain part was almost impressive. I was bleeding money to keep my sister alive, not making a dime off it. The motion required a hearing. My attorney submitted everything Mark and I had been putting together. Here's where my screw-up almost cost us. There was a 6-week stretch, late July through early September, where my log had major gaps. Everything was hitting at once. Chloe's emotional blow-up, Emily at her worst, barely holding it together at work. I'd stopped writing stuff down because I was running on fumes. I had texts and some photos, but the detailed daily log had holes. My mother's attorney found those gaps and argued the documentation was selectively compiled, that the missing weeks meant I was cherry-picking the bad stuff. It wasn't true. My own attorney told me the gaps were a problem. The judge didn't deny the motion outright. She ordered an independent evaluation, a court-appointed psychiatrist to figure out whether Chloe could make her own medical decisions. 3 more weeks of agonizing limbo. Chloe was furious. "I have cancer, not brain damage," she declared. "I shouldn't have to prove I'm smart enough to choose my own doctor." The evaluator met with Chloe twice, reviewed her records, spoke with her treatment team. Chloe was sharp, obviously with all her mental faculties. Anyone who spent 10 minutes with her could see that. She also told the evaluator, "I found this out later, my mother ignored my symptoms for 3 months. My brother drove 4 hours every weekend. You tell me who should be making decisions about my health." The evaluation came back clean. The motion was denied. The judge didn't give some big speech or anything. It was a 2-page ruling that showed up in the mail with a note that the filing was inconsistent with the documented record. My attorney said that basically meant any future filing from my mother would get extra scrutiny. Honestly, it didn't even feel like winning. It felt like paperwork, but it could have gone differently real quick. I won, and it showed up as a 2-page letter in the mail. And I'm honest enough to admit the gaps in my paperwork nearly sank me. Most guys telling a story like this make themselves sound like they played it perfectly. I'm telling you, I got tired, I got sloppy, and it almost cost me everything. My mother's attorney advised her not to appeal. She fired him and got a new one. The new attorney, after looking at the case file, told her the same thing. She didn't file again. Turns out the paper trail works both ways. She just didn't plan on being the one it caught. December. Chloe's latest blood work showed major improvement. Her white cell counts had stabilized in a range the oncologist called functional, and her bone marrow biopsy came back with way fewer blast cells than before. She was still on maintenance treatment and would be for a while, but the word remission had entered the conversation. She was discharged from inpatient care 2 days before Christmas. I picked her up in my truck. She sat in the passenger seat wearing that same beanie and a jacket 3 sizes too big because she still hadn't put weight back on. Chloe wasn't going back to our mother's house. As a legal adult, she chose where she lived. She chose me. I'd rented a 2-bedroom apartment closer to the hospital, clean, quiet, with a window in her room that got good morning light. My mother had gone quiet after the ruling. Not gone, I mean. She'd never be truly gone. But I think losing in court twice made it too expensive and too embarrassing to keep going. She still sent texts once in a while, always worded so carefully, always making it sound like genuine concern. Just checking on my daughter. I hope she's getting proper nutrition. I'd show them to Chloe. Usually, she didn't respond. Money-wise, I was in rough shape. The divorce, the months of driving, the apartment deposit, Chloe's uncovered bills. It had drained almost everything. I'd held on to my main job but burned through every last bit of goodwill and PTO doing it. On top of that, I'd picked up freelance logistics consulting through a contact Mark hooked me up with, and it was slowly closing the gap. I'm not going to pretend I handled the money gracefully. I missed rent in November and had to ask Mark for a loan. He Venmo'd me without a single question. I paid him back in January. I also had a credit card go to collections because I completely forgot about it during that hospital week. Still on my credit report, but I was keeping my head above water, barely. Chloe started outpatient treatment in January. Every 2 weeks, we'd make the drive. She'd sit through her infusion, and I'd sit in the waiting room, answering work emails. She started a GED program online since she'd missed too much school to graduate on time. She was mad about that for about a week, then got over it. Whatever, she'd say. I'll just finish it faster than everyone else. There was a night in late January that I think about a lot. We were sitting on the couch. She was doing practice tests on her laptop, and I was eating leftover pasta. Some show was on in the background, neither of us really watching it. She looked over at me and said, "You're my favorite person. Thank you for never giving up on me." That made me smile. Even though I lost so much, it was worth it. She made it, and I'll always be proud of her. There's no revenge fantasy here. It's just a guy eating pasta next to his sister, who's alive because he refused to look the other way. If you're ever in a situation where everyone's telling you it's not your problem, but something deep in your gut says it is, trust that gut. Not every fight is yours, but the ones that are, you'll know. So, tell me, would you sacrifice this much to save someone you truly care about? Let me know in the comments below.